Hello. Hi.
Hi, everybody. Well, we don't know if this is working, and we've never done anything like this before, but here we are, and we are on day, I don't know, 29 of being at our house, and we don't do social media, really, and we don't do techie things. So, but we have decided, in celebration of Harry's amazing book, My Meteorite, that we would do this Instagram live session with whoever of you is out there. We're just sitting here at our house with our child sequestered in a room playing Minecraft while people with masks walk by outside, so maybe your house looks something like your house. But I'm thrilled to do this because Harry had all kinds of great events scheduled for My Meteorite, which, many of which will still come to pass on the other side. But for now, we're here, and we're happy to be here, and I'm going to ask...
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, this is Harry.
Hey. Hey.
Where is it? I don't know where he's going. Oh, no. He's activating the dog. We also have a small poodle. So, at any rate, I hope you guys are all doing okay out there. I wish that we were all talking together. Here comes Billy. That's the dog.
This is the dog, and that's the bookcase.
Oh yeah, and before we start, I just wanted to say thanks to everyone at Penguin Press for suggesting this and making it possible, and to PJ Mark for helping out as well. Harry's book is so great, and I'm biased, but I don't think it's because we're married. I think, which I kind of know to be true, because Harry was working at it in our kitchen mostly for a couple of years, and then when he said, I think I wrote a book and I think it's done, he gave it to me. Gave it to me to read, and I wasn't totally surprised, but I was a little bit surprised, only in that it was really it really was a book, and it was done-ish, and it was fantastic, and I love it.
Babe.
I love
so
it.
Nice.
Well, it's true.
You're really nice.
It's true. I'm not.
Thanks for asking me questions.
Yes,
today.
I'm glad to be here. So I guess
this is actually a lifelong dream. I have always wanted to be a talk show host. So I'm not a talk show host. You're the host.
I know, right? I was going to say it's not coming true like so many of our dreams.
A little bit.
At present.
It's always a little obliquely coming true.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? If it works, maybe we'll be seeing you every week with a different subject matter. But for now, we thought maybe Harry could start off by reading a little bit from My Meteorite. And, we do have the meteorite here.
Oh, you think maybe we should show him?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it could be like a special appearance by the end or something.
We're going to withhold it? Maybe? Withhold the
I don't know where
meteorite?
it is. It was usually on the mantle.
Maybe it
now it's
escaped.
gone. That's okay. I can look for it
While you're reading.
While you
yeah, just
read.
wander around.
I see it. It's by the dead squirrel.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Show it. Someone's commenting.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Look, real live people. Okay, here it comes. It's so heavy. Like Harry has to labor to bring it over. Okay. Ready? Here it is. This is the meteorite. But it really needs to, is there anything you can show about
It's,
how
what?
heavy
I'm going to read about the meteorite. I'm going to
Okay.
show you more after, and I probably just ruined whatever I was going to read. But that's
Yeah,
it.
no, I don't
It's
think
quite
so,
heavy.
because this is literature, and that's a material object. Well, we can get into that later. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Harry, read from your book a little bit. Well,
All
why
right.
don't you? For the people.
All right.
For the Instagram live people.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I will.
Okay.
I'm not going to read very long. I'm going to stand up to read.
Great.
Because,
Feels good.
yeah, it feels good to stand up.
We have shoes on, which is really rare. We forgot to do fashion because we haven't really, I have lipstick on and a bra and shoes. A lot of things have not been happening, so this is really exciting for us.
This is a
all.
big moment.
Yeah, Harry's got a jacket.
I actually made a little set list, and outfits is number 2 on the set list. We just got scooted right.
Yep.
This is my anorak. Okay, so to set this up, this is about 5 or 6 minutes, not long. To set it up, this excerpt is, I've just made my first eBay purchase, and it's this iron meteorite that I just showed you. And I'm really excited to get it in the mail, and right after I order it, I travel to Houston to go to MPA's museum show, and then I'm on my way back. I know when I get back, there's going to be a meteorite there. And so I'm super excited about it. And so that's what, and then we open it up, and that's what I'm going to read. And to set that up a little bit, I put a little warm-up section in here to give you a sense of some of the more theoretical stuff in the book, or you know, some of my thoughts there. Okay, here it goes. Ready? The most astonishing thing to happen in the almost 14 billion years since the birth of the cosmos is that ordinary, apparently inert matter has, by its self-organizing capacity, or autopoiesis, become conscious. These materials, these tiny parts of the universe, have formed strange, powerful collaborations, and by this immanent force, and by heeding the laws of physics, become self-aware, made mind. Jane Bennett suggests that in this long view, mineral material appears the mover and the shaker, the active power, and the human beings, with their much lauded capacity for self-directed action, appear as its product. Edward Robert Harrison has written, hydrogen, given enough time, turns into people. Not all Aeonian developments in form and function should be considered to be the result of minerals alone, but rather the sum and effect of an interlinked variety of bodies and forces behaving as a kind of agentic assemblage. This web of pressures, situations, and collisions saturates and produces the cosmos. Along these lines, we're able to reconfigure our understanding of self as something that is not unitary, but is being made each moment by uncountable collisions in a complex open system. In other words, all things, including bodies, are perpetually changing, being formed and affected by the force of every legible and illegible collision, from intestinal bacteria to heritable traits to a cold breeze. And so it might be correct to say that this thing I call myself is actually much more fluid and much larger than I've been schooled to believe. We exceed our skins, and this, if you really think about it, changes everything. March 2016. I walked in, back from Houston, greeted the baby and Maggie, and then we, all of us at once, noticed the small box on the front porch. I hauled it into the house and onto our dinner table, held my breath. They watched while I got a knife. There was only the sound of cardboard tearing, and then I retrieved a bowling ball of a thing suffocated in bubble wrap, which appeared to be accompanied by Zot. Neither invoice nor receipt, no language. Remarkably heavy, and bandaged like this in a relentless, sad tape job that looked like it had been performed by a mental patient. Maggie backed away, suddenly nervous, pulled Iggy aside by the back of his shirt. I looked at them and back at the thing, unwrapped it while they watched it. There it was, an iron glob of gum. It was buzzing, it was glowing, just smaller than a human head, but much heavier, unbelievably heavy for its size, like it had a different type of gravity that applied to it, an alien gravity might have applied. It was dark gray, but metallic too, and had deep pits, lined in black, gooey, tortuous crevices, folds which were also penetrated by black, and burnished in zigs and snoods, coruscant at its facets, or scallops, its outermost convexities, which could have been observed at this point to have been no less vulnerable for being lustrous. It was a turtle from the event horizon, a doghead from Jupiter. All the weight gave two simultaneous and opposite impressions. The impression that it would like to have squirmed away, dropped away maybe, barreled right through the earth and on into the empty blue-black of space, and a kind of stalwart, noble servitude, unstained by fear. I'm here telling you, it was saying hello. Do you think it's radioactive? Are you sure about this, Rock? Maggie refused to touch it, pulled Iggy out of the room before relenting just a moment later. We all touched it at once, gingerly, guilelessly. We stared. It was beautiful, in the most banal and obvious sense of the word. I mean, plainly and strongly seductive, erotic. It did occur to me that it might spy on us or resubstantiate like a compressed foam Jesus into some sort of elephantine cuttlefish overlord, so I didn't know where to keep it overnight. Maggie was astonished. "How do you know it's real?" she asked several times. I showed her a small card I had finally uncovered, swaddled beneath the meteorite. "Here's an info card. He said he was going to send a certificate of authenticity, but I don't see anything here." Maggie reads the card and says, "Found, 1527, Argentina." "Yeah? Looks like the colonizing Spaniards came upon a group of people who showed them this field, Campo del Cielo, in 1527. So these rocks fell while humans watched." I treated the meteorite, as I would any guest, and laid it gently down on a small red wool coaster, and then got under my own covers to sleep. I dreamed that for the rest of my life I would reinvest all of the money that came in from selling artwork to purchase more and more pieces of this particular meteorite, the Campo del Cielo. I would spend my life reuniting the fragments, and slowly I would become famous, an artist known for this obsession. And when they were all back together, all of the pieces in one room, there would be a Terminator-like rise of the machines via this metallic reunification, a big bang in reverse, this thing I had caused, this thing I knew to do. I would be an agent of divine material chaos, but it wouldn't be a drag. It would be fate. It would be lovely and epic and right. Like the best heroine, but rather than singly ecstatic, encased in ugly nods, it would be ubiquitously, publicly salutary. The stress of the world would gather into a point, and, having become too dense to be supported by the web of our collective desire, would whirl into a baby black hole and drop all of the matter of our galaxy through an interstellar poop chute into a teardrop-shaped bag of shit, which would land in some nature canyon somewhere. It, terrestrial intersubjective tension, and its more intellectual cousin torsion, would then start again, so meekly that it might be mistaken for the weak force itself, gravity. It would glow, and the magnetic field would start to creep around a new Earth in another part of the still observable universe. We'd all die, but our constituent pieces would become other, much cooler stuff. I woke up horny. In the morning, I decided to take the meteorite out of the house, but didn't know how to carry it. I chose a large, clean canvas tote and tried not to bonk it around too much as I walked. It was metal, but may as well have been flesh and bone. It was clearly alive to me, an iron creature. On a shelf just above my welder, I let it sit in my studio for 3 days without looking at it again. But then things started to happen. Unbelievable things happened.
That was awesome.
All right, that's my reading of that.
It was awesome. All right, well, there's a lot of things that we have a few questions from the world that came in yesterday through social media, but I'm going to get to those in a minute. But first, I just wanted to ask the question on everyone's mind, Harry, which is that your book was supposed to come out on March 17th, which was the date that John Bolton's book was supposed to come out, when that mattered. And then I think that ended up being, just around exactly the date that we all locked down. And I just, I was looking at your book this morning, and I don't know if you guys can tell that from the excerpt, but a lot of this book is about experiments with sociality between like kind of hermetic art making practices versus going out into the world and ways that we make contact and ways that we don't. And I just wondered, I don't know, even though we live here, we don't really talk about it. We talk about like who's going to alcohol wipe down the grocery delivery. Yeah. And I wondered how you've been thinking about, the aborted book launch mixed up with this question about sociality and contact. Because also, and this is the last thing I'll say before I stop talking, is that Harry, as many of you guys know, has made multiple kinds of art. Many of them, like films and stuff, do travel and are reproducible. But, a lot of work that he makes in the form of sculpture is singular and is not reproducible in the same way that books or video, I guess, can be. And so there's also a different form of contact that this book is now making, which doesn't really have to do with people coming to a museum or a gallery unto it, but it has to do with the book going out, especially at a time when only the book can go out and you can't even go out with it. So I'm just wondering how you thought about all that since all this has happened.
Well,
I gotta put the dog away. Harry's gonna answer for you.
The dog
Okay.
gets really upset when people walk by, or she's trying to say hi or something. I have never had a book come out before, so I don't really know how it would have been. Otherwise, the main thing that happened was these events were postponed. I like to think of them as postponed. But in some ways, you said it well. There's a way that a book is already printed at that time, and it sort of travels around and does its work in its, in my chosen form for it. It's not even a kind of substandard form when the book arrives and you open it and begin to read it. So there's a way. Again, I haven't had a book come out before, and so I'm not really sure. But as far as the book is concerned, I'm kind of interested in this being the sort of launch date for it. I don't feel like it's an aborted launch at all. I feel like that there's some kind of transformed possibility. There's a kind of transformation that is also a possibility. I also think the book is, maybe good company in this weird time where we're talking about connectedness and particles and love and sociality and also grief, which is a sort of big part of it right now. There's, on some days it feels like it's a parallel universe, and then really often it really doesn't, and I'm really scattered and sort of grief-stricken.
Or life.
Yeah, that life in a pandemic is like happening in this other parallel universe to like sort of managing this performance or a book launch or whatever. They're sort of not. Some days they meet and some days they just don't meet. They're sort of loping alongside each other, But I have, a propensity toward also sort of joking around when the chips are down as a kind of form of weird empowerment.
It's hard to do that over many, many days now, isn't it? But yes.
Yes, I'm definitely faltering.
I wasn't saying it to you. I was just saying that I always think I'm going to be, of more good cheer and less grim, but then things just go along. But I think you're right. And I was reading Harry's book this morning, and I was noticing that, there's a lot of deaths in the book. In fact, it's kind of structured by so many deaths. It begins with his father dying, and then there are so many more. But I think that everybody from Prince to David Bowie to his father and his mother and to other assorted people, and I think a lot of it even has to do with, about being present or not present when we're able to say goodbye, or how to communicate love. I think it's a great read right now. Painful and kind of ecstatic at the same time. So my next question was just, it's weird to interview Harry about a book because we talk all the time. So I was kind of like, what questions have we not already talked about? But one thing that came up this morning when we were talking, which we hadn't yet really talked about, was that like Harry was talking about the way he makes art and the way that he wrote this book. And I mean, there are a lot of different kinds of writers, and there are also a lot of different kinds of artists. So it's not like, how people work with art material here versus how people work with words over here. But you were saying, I thought it was interesting, something about sculpting or making things out of objects and making a book, and how you felt like certain it wasn't even like you were saying that certain elements of it were lost. It was more just that, and I feel like this too, that sometimes literary language that stays too literary doesn't make space or room for all the ways that we make things, So I was wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit about art making and word making.
What do you mean literary things that stay too literary? What are you talking about?
Well, I just think for myself that a lot of problems of form or making in books are often solved for me by a figure that isn't literary, like how a snakeskin works is something that's like recurred to me, or like I'll see a movie and the way that it uses a certain form of montage will give me the idea for what's wrong with my book project or something like that. But I think a lot of people in like English departments just talk about, genre and literary tropes and different things, and kind of forget that we might get an idea from a meteor about how to structure a book or something like that. But because you work with so many different materials, I thought maybe there might be something there. I guess also because within literature, there's always this kind of, or literary philosophy, a long-standing question of are words material in the same way that like working with, resin or plastic or, granite is material, and I just wondered if you had thoughts about that too.
Ooh, that's a lot.
I know.
But the last thing first,
Okay.
Words as material. I mean, I think I have been making a lot of sculpture and some video lately. I've done all kinds of different things, but those are the things that I've have spent a lot of time doing in the last year or so. And so taking up the book project did feel a lot to me, actually, like moving objects around. It was kind of like first kind of, and it's weird when I write how much more clearly I can think. I feel like when I'm speaking, I have like 100 things I want to say at once, and I don't actually know the thought, and then my mouth starts doing stuff. And it's different when I'm writing. I can get something goopy out and then sculpt it. I can make it, and then as I'm making it, I can suddenly discover that there were actually 5 thoughts inside of that one, that first thing, and that is like wild. That's like a wild, magical, generative, sort of fecund experience from that happens with language, which is really an amazing thing. And so, first I'll make a sort of maybe make a thought or a thought object, as I sometimes call them in the book, and then and I feel like there's a way that I work in performance and in video, and there's a way that I've always worked, and maybe it has to do with how I think, which is that I like to think that there are certain thoughts that are so specific and so amazing and so in motion that you can't actually catch up with them with language, and so or the art object, is not the thing necessarily. In some ways, it is the thing because it does something, and it's something to be next to, and it's something to behold, and it's something to experience. But also, it's also not the thing. That there's some other thing which is like the negative space or the affective resonances that are really specific, and they're not approximate at all. They're really specific, and so there's something for me in the sculpture project and in the book project where I'm sort of building something in hopes that something that is unmentioned in language starts to be, the subject or the experience or sort of like the results. The results is a bad word, but something that I'm actually trying to do, which is not necessarily hit the thing on the nose, which is not my style.
Yeah, no, it's not. Although I think your book is a different kind of experiment with hitting things on the nose, which I think is really interesting. But we'll leave that there because I think we should respect our public. And over the weekend, some questions came in from social media, and I thought that was interesting, so I'm going to ask you a couple. Are you ready?
Yeah. Can you act like Roseanne and Dana when you ask that?
I don't know, really. I don't know what that would be like. Is that
Okay.
from SNL?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
From
know.
my childhood.
I think
Mr. Richard Fair from Fort Wayne, New Jersey.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm just going to read.
Just go ahead.
Okay.
Just read it. We don't know who these questions came from.
No, we don't know, but thank you for them. This one has to do with me, so why don't I ask it? You've described your being married to a writer as being an epileptic married to a strobe light. It was a strobe light artist, I think was your phrase. Did your experience of being written about in the past inform how you wrote about people in your life in this book?
Yeah, it absolutely did.
It did, yeah.
I think, and this is not to be too pointed or anything, but there's something about, I feel like I've learned, I think, that a lot of times being written about is sort of painful. There's a kind of pain associated with it, and that's for any number of reasons that have to do with like you want to be somehow represented. It feels like it's you that's there, or you think it might be you that shows up in the book, but it never is. It's something else. It's a thing that now exists in a book. That's a construct, and so there's a sort of disappointment there. But I think going through the looking glass with that and sort of taking up this project, I sort of knew that was part of it, and I think it's due to the book, the sort of logics of the book, which at first the book doesn't necessarily have a lot of demands and pressures. You know, it sort of it's nebulous in some ways, and then as the project goes along, it starts to be very demanding. It has its own logics, and so all of the things that are in the book, not just the writing about people, but whether it's theoretical writing or other musings, all of those things start to go into this crucible in some way. At least that's how I experienced it. And the book, it starts to tell you what needs to have happen. And so this kind of crucible puts a lot of pressure on. And I think that's sort of fascinating. I sort of knew that was going to happen. I think I generally was trying to be generous and sweet about the people that I wrote about, and also sometimes they're there. There's not a lot of physical description. There's not a lot of description of people's artworks. You know, they're sort of there as like monuments or something, or kind of like figures of sociality and community. And without needing to like get into a deep discussion in the book of what community is to me, they show up to do that.
I mean, Harry and I talked a lot about when he was writing, and I think it's apparent in the book when you read it that, you know, he'd been looking at the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas a lot and talking about this notion that maybe, I don't know if you want to say anything about, but about writing for like 100 years from now. And in some ways this is part of the sweetness, and I think also the accuracy of the, you know, all these people that you're writing about, part of an art making and thinking community, are awesome and are historical and are important and are part of a subculture/culture, subcultures and cultures, you know, many different things vectoring through you, but that there's, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that there's kind of a pain, and that the pain of glancing on people quickly with proper names, which without a long project of representation or whatever, but yet also, you know, a pleasure of their inclusion in this portrait, and that's, you know, I mean, God only knows what people thought about Alice B. Toklas, you know, autobiography of Alice B. Toklas, or what, you know, Matisse or Picasso had to say with their representations or whatnot, you know. All that's kind of out with the wash.
Yeah, I mean, I do talk about that in the book to kind of set up the idea, and it's weird how I was, in some sense, all of that, in some sense, the proper names are not for now. The proper names are if there's a world in 80 years and 100 years, it's for them. There was a kind of idea when I was younger that Gertrude Stein was forever ago, and then now that I've grown up, I realize it wasn't forever ago. It was just a little while ago. But I really liked as a kid knowing that these certain artists and writers had been thinking together and hanging out together. It was kind of odd to realize that they had also been young people once together, and I was very inspired by that. As a kid, for some reason, I took it to mean that you needed to pay attention to your buddies and your friends, and not try to climb into someone else's art world, but that if you made interesting things together and focused on each other and loved each other, that you would eventually make your own art world or sort of literary circle or your own new things.
Amen.
Amen.
I say to that.
Hallelujah.
All right, so what are you reading during the quarantine? This is not from me. I'm asking.
No, this is.
What are you reading during the quarantine?
Asking this. I have been looking at Roger Kelwa, Man, Play, and Games, because I'm starting another project, which is dabbling in sort of with this idea of games. And I've been looking also at the Gregory Bateson book, and he writes about play as well. And he's sort of the titular namesake here, and without the random there can be no new thing, is a quotation from this book that I'm now re-looking at called Man and Nature. Yeah. It's a little, I have to say, it is a little hard to concentrate.
Just a little bit. I'm sure all of you
really
guys are really buckled down on
honestly.
your concentration. But yeah, no, it is. I know. It's. No one. I mean, I'm reading like a lot of self-help personally. So, moving on. Who are your literary heroes and influences? Which I thought was an interesting question. Yeah, I guess because the book has a lot of like, I would say, you know, more theorists and artists than, you know, writers per se, but I know that they're, you know, but I know. Yeah, so I'm curious. I mean,
I'm not
I was
sure if
also
I'm
curious
allowed
about
to,
the,
if
yeah.
that qualifies as literature. It doesn't.
What theory?
Yeah.
Whatever. I just mean that I'm interested because, I mean, Harry and I feel like have an interesting, I don't know. Well, we won't
Well,
get into that.
I have so many literary heroes.
Right, yeah.
I have so many literary heroes. I mean, Virginia Woolf, changed my life. I love Virginia Woolf. And Samuel Beckett, James Baldwin, Edward Glissant, who's a theorist but an amazing writer. There's so many. I've been lately, live people. I really like Wayne Koestenbaum. He's absolutely a hero. Anyway, more than I could name.
Yeah.
No,
That's better than I usually
I have
do.
to say that I don't enjoy anything that's too straightforward, and so my heroes tend to be people where the writing's sort of tumbling around and stretching my capacities.
Mm-hmm.
I like to be in a situation where I find so much pleasure in being overwhelmed and confused.
Well,
it's
that's
a little
why
odd,
also, I mean, Harry's book talks about pale fire a fair amount, and interestingly, Harry researching now, like he was saying about game stuff, and thinking about Nabokov and chess and other things, and I think, that the experiment and in the delight in language and in wildness and in churning and in kind of almost more than a brain can bear while reading it, but testing that out, seems very Nabokovian to me, and in your writing, and I think it's out of fashion right now. I think in a way that's a shame, and I think it's
let's bring it back.
Yeah, and I think
Bring it back.
Harry's doing a great job of bringing it back. In that way, but yeah, that's something that I've thought about too. So maybe one more question, or
Sure.
what do you think? Yeah, okay, I don't know.
We gotta wind this thing
Okay,
up,
I know. I mean,
folks.
honestly, it's really fun to talk to an imaginary audience. I feel
Yeah.
like we haven't talked to anybody besides
Not
each
so
other
bad.
for days. So if you really are out there, that's great. All right, I'm not going to ask. Well, let's see. Well, okay. The critic for book form described the book as a brain. Is that something that occurred to you while you were writing it? How did you think of structuring the book, since it's based so much on coincidences and collisions?
Well, I didn't think of the book as a brain particularly, although I feel like as an artist, one of the things I've always been trying to do is to stay with these questions and these kind of hot spots and these things that kind of interest me and confuse me, and be in that and try and uncover the specific parts of that are actually the best, most interesting part. And that's, decades of that practice at this point, and basically trying to tell the truth about what I'm interested in, and tell the truth about what's confusing to me, and tell the truth about the experiment I'm going to try to do to try to think in that confusion and stuff. And so if I'm doing that right, I see how that would start to maybe accrue into some sort of idea that there's an imprint of my mind. Sure, I can see that. And I as far as structuring the book, I took notes for a year. I knew I was writing a book, and I took notes for a year, and I sort of didn't look at the notes very much. I sort of let it accrue with this kind of light attention and this kind of obliqueness. It's almost like they were found objects. I was taking notes about a lot of things that were happening, or different things I was watching, and sort of letting that accrue, and not like helicopter parenting. that. And then about 11 months after that, I started writing what I call in earnest, and I started filling out the notes. And I also started it was surprising, but I also accidentally sort of started writing in synchronous time about events that were taking place that year as well. So I feel like the book kind of toggles back and forth between 2016, 2017. And then some of these other theoretical interests I was reading on. I think of the book as a fugue. I remember when I started writing it, I eventually thought of it as a fugue structure, and that's I think a musical term more, where a song begins with certain phrases, not a song, but maybe an orchestra begins with certain phrases, and you think it's going one way, and it might just repeat, but actually, in the second part, a phrase falls out and a new one is introduced, and then in the third part, another phrase falls out and another new one is introduced, and so by the end of the book, there are a bunch of different sort of like series of anecdotes, that are maybe addressing a larger theme, but it's a different set of figures.
Mm-hmm.
The fugue.
I'm looking at the meteorite and I'm noticing it too looks a little bit like a brain. So
It really does.
I
It's
thought
got
maybe
that
we could
cleave in the middle.
end our session with just holding once again the meteor brain. Okay, everybody, this is it. Look, so lovely and amazing, right? All right, you guys. All right, I think that's gonna.
We're supposed to say.
Okay, what are we gonna say? Oh yeah, you want to say something about the book and about bookstores.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want me to say
To
it?
buy this book, you should check out your local bookstores, because a lot of them are open
And we don't want all
they
that's
have
left
online
after this to be
services.
Amazon. You know.
They have online services, and they can send it to you at your house. So that's something to look into. And thank you to Penguin Press for helping me see this project through. I'm just super, super grateful, and I hope everybody gives it a chance and lets me keep you company for a little while. Anyway, thanks for listening.
All right, everybody, take care. Big love out to the world. Stay safe. You want to turn it off?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Here, watch me try and figure out how to turn it off.
Okay, I'll just vacate the scene. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Bye.